I don't know if you can check in your settings on TikTok to see how you got. Oh, hello. Oh, how cool. Oh my God, that's so cool. What the hell was that? Was that you, Carrie, or what was that? Was that Carrie's? Was that the Fox legend? That was so cool. I've never seen that before. That was Sonic? Sorry, I didn't see which person. Are you sure that was it Sonic or was it Carrie? It was Carrie. Yeah, that was. Thank you so much for that, by the way, too, because but you can always tell too, gifts that are bigger and stay on for a while are usually more generous. Not that we don't love every gift, but that looked kind of over the top. So thank you for that. That was really, I've never seen that one before. Oh, it's the fox from Sonic. Okay, I of course don't know. I've heard of Sonic, but I don't know Sonic. That's why I wasn't sure what that was. Sonic Fox. Oh, and Grabthar's hammer. Who was that from? Flower Lady. Thank you, darling. Appreciate that. Carmelina, Mel, a couple of you guys with roses too. Hope. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. You guys have been very generous the last week. I'm not sure why. I'm not going to complain, but you've been like particularly generous. So I want to acknowledge that. So thank you. That's been very sweet of you. Oh, the blue hedgehog. Well, I mean, I know Sonic the Hedgehog, but I've never, you know what? It was a later generation than me. So I never, it's a Dance with Me. That looks like the box from Say Anything. Wasn't it Say Anything? Was that the movie with what's his name? Who I love? What's his name? I'm forgetting his name. Who kind of emo actor, very good, who was in a bunch of those movies. It wasn't John something, was it? John Cusack. Yeah, John Cusack. God, I loved him. He was so, is he still around? John Cusack was so good. Anyway, good microphone on YouTube isn't working. The sound is off. It's working. It's being evil, guys. It's just being evil. Oh, hold on. This is interesting. 1 second. La, la, la. There we go. Well, let me turn the microphone off. I don't want to blow the microphone out for anybody else. But something's going on, and I'm not sure why. YouTube is messing up, guys. There's nothing I can do about it. It's fine for you guys? Okay. All right. Let me get rolling. So today was big news on the Charlie Kirk murder front. The prosecutors in Utah filed murder charges against Tyler Robinson. They gave some more details. I will say there's kind of a couple things going on here. One, typically, and Trump's people have been breaking this rule, typically prosecutors do not want to give out too much information before the case goes to trial because, well, a couple things. They don't want to tip their case. They don't want to tip what they have to the defendant, but also they don't want to be accused of tainting the jury pool. They don't want the judge to get pissed at them that they've been trying to litigate in the court of public opinion, right? So prosecutors tend not to put a lot of information out there. Trump and Kash Patel have been putting a lot of information, and seasoned professional prosecutors are saying they're frankly putting out too much and it's unprofessional. Now, having said that, for people like you and me, we want all the information we can get, right? So right? I want to know the story, right? So the prosecutors came out today. They filed charges against Tyler Robinson, the alleged shooter. We're supposed to use, in America, we say alleged shooter because you're innocent until proven guilty, literally. They filed charges against him. We'll talk about that. They gave some details. The details are a little weak still. They're a little more clear. I would say from the details today, it sounds like a political shooting. It does. Just to sort of give you the summary, and then we'll get into it. The shooter's politics. Let's just again, alleged shooter. I mean, every time I say it, if I don't say alleged, right, just know that it's alleged. The alleged shooter's politics. Not entirely clear, but he clearly said, and I've got some quotes here and stuff. He clearly said, according to the prosecutors, that he shot Charlie Kirk because Charlie Kirk was too full of hate, he said, and he couldn't be negotiated with. Okay, that's interesting. That would typically suggest that he wasn't to the right of Charlie Kirk if he thought Charlie Kirk was, well, probably, I shouldn't say it, probably not to the right of Charlie Kirk. The only thing is, keep in mind, there are never Trump Republicans. There are Republicans. There are more never Trump Democrats, but there are Republicans who are never Trump. The shooter, the one that shot at Trump and it cut his ear, that shooter was a registered Republican. So we don't know. Today made it look more like he was on the left. It did, but there were some weird things. For example, the mother was in, and this, what bothers me is when the prosecutors, and I'm a lawyer, Georgetown Law, when the prosecutors give information and you can tell they're giving you only part of the information, that always bothers me. And, it's, oh, hey, Misha. They said, the mother said, actually, I'm going to pull this up. This was the quote from the prosecutor. I'm going to pull this up so I get it direct. Okay. Mom said over the last, these are my notes writing down, but they're pretty close to exact. Mom said over the last year, he became more political and started leaning more to the left, becoming more pro-gay and more pro-trans rights. Couple things here. He became more political. Okay, that doesn't tell us much, right? I mean, you could be more political and sane. You could be more political and left, more political and right. Who knows? More political and middle. He started leaning more to the left. Well, if he started leaning more to the left in the last year, then that suggests that he wasn't left before. That's interesting to me, right? I mean, in terms of what this guy's politics are. Also, if he started leaning more to the left, that's rather subtle. That is not he became a raging lefty. He became a leftist radical. Mom said he started leaning more to the left. That's my point here is, what is interesting to me is it is in the prosecutor's interest to present this as this. Well, let me put it this way. The governor clearly of Utah, the Republican, wants the prosecutor to make this political and say it's Democrats. Trump absolutely wants the prosecutor to make this about Democrats. It is just the Justice Department in Washington has the whole story. They're getting the whole story. If they had proof that this guy was a Democrat or whatever, a liberal, whatever, you would think that they would have leaked it by now because it's been 6 days. They've not. The fact that, like I said, one of the most damning pieces of political evidence in terms of his political mindset was the mom saying he started leaning more to the left. That's left. I mean, that's moving left, but started leaning more to the left is not exactly, like I said, it's not exactly, oh my God, he became a radical, right? By the way, the other interesting point with that, and again, I'm a lawyer, went to Georgetown, so I'm not a prosecutor, but I try to approach these things with a legal mindset. What's also interesting is, what was I going to say with this? With the mom leaning more to the left. Oh shoot, I had another point. It'll come back to me. More political, started leaning more to the left. Oh, so he started becoming more pro-gay and more pro-trans. This is interesting. First of all, mom says, as her proof of him leaning more to the left, that he started to become more pro-gay and more pro-transgender. To a mom who is a Republican, to a mom who is part of a MAGA family, according to news reports, to a mom who is a Mormon, typically more conservative, typically significantly conservative culturally or religiously in societal gay issues, trans issues, typically. If your son becomes more pro-gay in the last year and pro-trans, thank you, Marcia, I say this as a gay man, if your son suddenly becomes more pro-gay and more pro-trans, you will interpret that as being he's becoming more liberal, right? Now, as a gay person, I can tell you, just because you're pro-gay doesn't mean you're not a Republican, right? But to a parent, to a religious parent, to a conservative parent, to a MAGA parent, to a Mormon parent, your child suddenly, I say suddenly, in the last year, starts saying things pro-gay and defending gays, starts saying things pro-trans and defending trans people, your perception of that would be he's becoming a liberal, right? That doesn't mean he's becoming a liberal, right? But I could see his mom saying, because again, the quote from the prosecutor, mom said over the last year, he became more political and started leaning more to the left, becoming more pro-gay and more pro-trans rights. Her proof is that he was becoming more pro-gay and more pro-trans. That's her proof that he was leaning to he was moving to the left. That's not proof that you're moving to the left. That's just, by the way, In this case, what it's proof of, he was bisexual according to reports. He was living with a guy. His roommate was also his boyfriend. So A, he was bi. B, the boyfriend, and again, they said it today, so I'm going to accept it as truth. I hope it's true, but they said it today at the press conference. The boyfriend is now transgender. May not have been before, but now is. Came to realize he's transgender, whatever his story is. And he is transitioning to becoming a woman. Now, so A, the shooter was bisexual and dating a guy. That might make him pro-gay. B, the guy he's dating has now come out as trans and is transitioning to a woman. He's okay with that. That now makes him pro-trans, right? Thank you, Adventure, for the gift. My point here is, over the last year, maybe he became more pro-gay and pro-trans because he was coming to terms with being bisexual. Thank you, Marsha. And coming to terms with having a boyfriend who was transgender. That doesn't mean you're a liberal, right? But from mom's perspective, mom simply sees he's becoming more pro-gay. He's becoming, maybe mom even knew. Maybe mom knew he was dating a guy who then was trans. So from mom's perspective, if you're a conservative mom, that could suggest your son has become more liberal. Doesn't mean it is. Anyway, so to me, that was interesting, right? As to what this guy's politics are. The second thing, very interesting evidence that the prosecutor mentioned, that the boyfriend, we're going to say boyfriend because we still don't have enough information on this whole trans thing, to be honest, but I'm going to say boyfriend for now. The boyfriend, the roommate, let's call him the roommate. The roommate exchanged text messages with the alleged shooter, with Tyler. We'll just call him Tyler. It's easier. The alleged shooter, with Tyler after the shooting. Tyler messaged him and said, look under my keyboard for my computer. And he said, okay, lifts the keyboard. And there's a note underneath that says, thank you, Alan. Thank you, Elizabeth. There's a note underneath that says, I'm going to basically take out Charlie Kirk because he's going to be in town. I'm going to take him out. And hold on, I'll actually pull this up and read you a little more specifically here. One sec here. One sec here. Drop everything you're doing, he wrote, a text to his roommate, and look under my keyboard. The note under the keyboard said, thank you, Rebecca. Note under the keyboard said, I have the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. Now he finds the note because he gets messaged by Tyler, but the message is after Charlie Kirk was already shot and killed. So the roommate responds, are you joking? And he says, no, or he says something, are you joking? And he says, are you joking? And he says something like, no. And the roommate says, you're not the one who did it, right? And Robinson responds, I am. I'm sorry. Now, the police have all of that. Those are considered, I was just watching the news today, those are considered confessions because they're actual statements, confessions. They can be used for the jury because they're actual statements by the defendant himself. After being asked by his roommate why he did it, he said, I had enough of his hatred. Some hate cannot be negotiated out. The roommate asked him how long he's been planning this. Robinson set it up over a week ago. Wait, how do you set something like this up a week with a week's notice? You're a 22-year-old kid, like college dropout. How do you, that's weird. That's a little weird, right? He seemed to pull this off very well. Casing the joint, the rooftop, getting away. That just seems like a lot. Very smart guy, but still, right? He mentioned the bullets. He apparently did engrave the bullets himself, which is interesting. Thank you, Vince. He did engrave the bullets himself. He did the engraving maybe a couple of weeks ago or something. He apparently, and this kind of makes sense actually. Remember the bullets had all sorts of goofy stuff, a bunch of meme stuff. There was some fashion stuff too, but there was mostly meme stuff. He made a comment about basically saying, wouldn't it be funny to have, basically noting that they are memes and saying, wouldn't it be funny to have those memes repeated on Fox News? He put the memes on the bullets as simply a joke. Now, a sick joke, obviously. Thank you, Vince. Planning the murder. But he, thank you, MX as well. He put the engravings on them so that when the story became in the news, part of the story would be, ha, 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 look at the goofy meme he put on the bullets. I mean, that's weird. I mean, there's so much about this story that's weird. You know, it's actually what I think I've told you guys this before. I had a undergraduate. I studied rhetoric, which was writing in English. I was kind of an English major, a writing major, and took a upper level Shakespeare course my senior year of college. And we were studying King Lear. And King Lear, I don't remember the story very well, but I do remember King Lear kind of going crazy. I think it was Desdemona, turns on his daughter. And the discussion we were having in class, mind you, this was many years ago, so I don't remember the story entirely. But the discussion we had in class was, why did he do this? Why didn't he recognize what he was doing to his daughter, right? This kind of stuff. And we were all kind of stymied. And finally, and the professor said something, and I thought it was interesting because I thought you could look at her comment as being a bit facile, but at the same time, it stuck with me. And she said, you know, you're all having a hard time understanding why he did this, why he didn't realize what he was doing, why he turned on his own flesh and blood, because he was crazy and you wouldn't do that. Cordelia? Thank you. It wasn't Desdemona. Oh, Desdemona was Othello. Thank you. Thank you, Flaming. Yep. Desdemona was Othello. Right. Cordelia. Thank you. Oops. All right. And her comment was, you can't understand why King Lear did this to his daughter because he was crazy and you're not crazy. Like literally, you cannot get inside the mind of somebody who's broken. And again, I could see it being I could see it being a cop-out excuse. Like, oh, well, yeah, good answer. You can't figure out a crazy person. But I also could see, it reminds me of this story too. There's something wrong with this. Again, if he's the shooter, right? We're trying to be fair. There's something wrong with this guy. He didn't just date a transgender guy or gal and decide, I'm going to go and kill somebody who's anti-trans. You don't do, that's not normal behavior. It's not, right? I mean, look at this show, all of us talking. A lot of us here have very strong political views. I am hoping none of us here have ever thought our views are strong, so therefore you would not even endorse, that you would turn violent on someone you disagreed with. Like, that's not normal behavior. So what's missing from this story for me is it still doesn't make sense what happened. It doesn't. Now, again, he may be crazy. He may be, I don't know, right? Psychological, who knows? I mean, something like he may have had a psychological break. Who knows? But there's still something that doesn't make sense here. It just doesn't make sense to this story. And by the way, they don't necessarily have to prove it. Thank you, Bryce, Jamie. They don't necessarily have to prove why he did it. Motive is not required. What you need to prove is he did it, right? This was his gun. This is his victim. These are his fingerprints. These are his DNA. Here's the video. Like, he confessed in writing. I mean, you've got, right? He told these people would be hearsay, but the confession in writing. You just have to prove that he did it. You don't have to prove the motive. So they may not be able to prove them. Who knows? But to me, it's upsetting though, because and maybe because also we try to make sense of stuff. We want to understand. Good question, Nene. I don't know. Nene says, do you need motive for the death penalty? Don't know. They do have to prove motive if they want to prove the federal hate crime. I will bet you that the federal hate crime statute does not cover political affiliation, and here's why. A certain political party would be very, very upset if you could basically make it a crime for them to go after you for your political leanings, basically. I will guarantee you, I mean, I did a lot of work on hate crimes. I will guarantee you, Republicans in particular did not want politics added on. So your political views are not a protected class in America. They're not. So it wouldn't be, hate crime wouldn't apply in this case for politics. They can try, and this gets interesting. It for Republicans, and this blew up on Pam Bondi last night, Trump's attorney general. For Republicans, last night for the first time, they actually did a double take on all the sort of some of the extremist stuff they've been proposing. Just 2 months ago, think of Beach Lady, J.D. Vance, our vice president, was in Europe chastising the Europeans, saying they don't believe in free speech and blah, 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 blah. Now this week, J.D. Vance wants to throw people in jail who simply are mean, basically. He said anything that's like hate speech or whatever, he wants to throw liberals in jail. Pam Bondi, Trump's attorney general last night, and she had to take it back today because even Republicans got upset. Trump's attorney general last night claimed she was going to jail people for hate speech. No, she's not. And she had to back off. In America, there is no such thing as hate speech. Hate speech laws are illegal in America. Literally, it's illegal. We've talked about this before. I've never fully understood in Europe how it works. I know the UK has fewer restrictions than we do. In America, I can't really give you examples because I think TikTok wouldn't like it. But bottom line is, as long as you're not inciting violence, right? If you call for violence, then you could be in trouble legally. But you can hate whoever you want publicly. You can hate groups of people, minorities. You can defend that horrible man in World War II, the German in America. You can exalt him to the rafters on street corners, everything else. It is legal. It is horrible, but it is legal in America. She said she was going to imprison anybody who had said critical things of Charlie Kirk. And to their credit, a ton of Republicans spoke up and said, no, you're not. Even what's his face? Ted Cruz, the senator from Texas, said, no, you're not. Matt Walsh, who's really like a Republican activist, he called for her to be fired. So she backed off this morning and said, well, no, not hate speech, only violent speech, whatever. So she was close to getting it right this morning. But what was interesting is that's the first time I've seen, did Elon say something? Really? Frito? That's interesting. This is the first time I've seen any of these guys push back, at least against the Trump people, to something extremist and say, no, we don't do that in America. It's the first time. Hopefully it continues, but let's see. In any case, let me see what else. Kind of interesting because the parents, his mother recognized him in the photo. So today the story is mom recognized him in the photo. Mom called him and said, where are you? He's at home. She goes, where have you been the last couple of days? He says, home, I'm sick. She said, okay. Thank you, Luis. Mom didn't believe him. Mom talked to dad. She showed dad the photos and said, is this him? And dad was like, it looks like him. At that point, dad, I think they talked to the son. The son said, it's not me. They didn't believe him. Thank you, Mary. And at this point, I think they might have reached out to, I have no idea what that is. They might have reached out to a family friend who came over and talked to him. Oh, and somehow they convinced him to turn himself in. So, that's what we know. I'm trying to see what else here. When asked why he did it, there's too much evil and the guy spreads too much hate. A family friend met with Robinson and his parents and convinced him to turn himself in. In Oklahoma, the Republican hello. Oh, I love that Pharaoh. Thank you, Marsha. I love that Pharaoh thing. I keep thinking it's a little not politically correct, but I do love it. Thank you. I always forget. I'm sorry. I'm glad I looked up because that one's really cool. Thank you for that. That's very cool. The Republican superintendent of schools in Oklahoma instructed schools across the state to observe a moment of silence for Charlie Kirk on Tuesday. In a letter to school leaders, he praised Kirk for promoting American exceptionalism, Christianity's role in society, and our country's history, as well as conservative values. Okay. A little more here. ABC's Jonathan Karl. So I talked about Pam Bondi, Trump's attorney general, who was calling for people to be jailed for political speech, which is completely illegal in America, something Republicans used to oppose. ABC's Jonathan Karl asked Trump about Attorney General Bondi's comments that she would go after those who were targeting anyone with hate speech. And Trump responded, "We'll probably go after people like you because you treat me unfairly. It's hate. You have a lot of hate in your heart. Maybe they'll come after ABC. Well, ABC paid me $16 million recently for a form of hate speech. Maybe they'll have to go after you." This is our president. No, actually, I was going to Google this. Somebody help me out here. Brendan Carr, Brendan Carr is the Republican chair of the FCC. He's a Republican, right? I was going to Google this before the show. I know he's the Republican, but I want to make sure because this is important. Brendan Carr. Thank you, Marcia. Anybody? Brendan Carr. I think he's the Republican. I can Google, but it's easier for me if you guys can check. Nope. Trump. Brendan Carr. Let me see. I'm pretty sure he's. I think he's a Republican. Brendan Carr. Nobody's checking. Well, everything he went to Georgetown too. That's nice. Trump named him, so he's got to be a Republican. Yeah, he's a Republican. Okay, so this is the Republican chair of the Federal Communications Commission. He's a MAGA activist, basically. Listen to what he said about the hate speech stuff. I think you can draw a pretty clear line, and the Supreme Court has done this for decades, that our First Amendment, our free speech tradition, protects almost all speech. He said social media posts that incite violence are potentially unprotected by the First Amendment, though he added that it's a relatively small category of speech, and there are existing laws on the books that deal with that. So again, very interesting that a lot of, again, the freedom of speech stuff, ironically, they're finally, oh, really, Steve? Wow. Yeah, I'm not surprised, though. They're going after everybody. What else we got here? Oh, so Trump's attorney general did this too. Listen to this. Some local Office Depot is a store in America. It's a chain, and they sell office supplies. And you can get things printed there. Somebody for a Charlie Kirk vigil wanted to get Charlie Kirk posters printed, and it must be in a liberal town or something. And the local Office Depot refused to print the Charlie Kirk posters. Trump's attorney general said on TV last night that she's going to prosecute Office Depot for not printing the posters. She's going to put them in prison. No, she's not, because there is no law in America protecting political speech. There is no law treating political speech as a protected class that you can't discriminate against in your business. By the way, the Republicans, the reason I know this is because Republicans won a Supreme Court case, as Josh just said. Good call, Josh. Thank you, Beach Lady. Republicans just won a Supreme Court case. Oh, thank you, Marsha. Oh, that's cool. That is cool. Thank you. Because they didn't like the fact that a local bakery out west was afraid that she might, and I don't even think she had to. She was afraid that someday she might have to bake a cake for a gay couple for their wedding, and she didn't want to do. I don't even think she was asked to. She said, "This is totally." The Supreme Court played. Anybody who's a lawyer knows what I'm talking about. She didn't even have standing. No one asked her to bake a cake. She had no standing. Goes all the way to the Supreme Court. They say, "You're right. You can't force somebody to bake a cake for gay people. You can't force somebody to do something if it goes against their political beliefs, unless the person's a protected class. Politics is not a protected class." She threatened an American company with jailing them because they didn't want to print a poster, a political poster. I mean, it's, again, what's remarkable is, and I've said this before, and I really don't understand it, but I have to find somebody I can get on the show to talk about this. It seems that in the Trump era, there are a lot of diehard Republican positions that you'd think they would never go back on, like religion, like standing up for religion, standing up for, freedom, so to speak, in America and around the world, standing up for, like we said, against government intervention in the economy, which they consider socialist. All those things that they used to believe in are gone because Donald Trump doesn't believe in them. And they're, other than this freedom of speech thing last night, that they did speak up and say, whoa, right? You can't jail people for hate speech in America. And a lot of Republicans spoke up on that. Other than that, they haven't been speaking up too much. And I don't quite know why. It's been very weird. Very weird. Anyway, Lauren, I didn't see what happened. Lauren says, how do you feel about teachers being fired for posting anti-Charlie Kirk content on personal socials? That gets really complicated. Here's why. You get a couple different issues going on here. Thank you, Marcia. Marcia, you've been very generous lately. Thank you. I've noticed the last maybe even week or so, your name pops up a lot. Thank you for that. And I don't know the answer to this. It's an interesting question, first of all. Can you punish somebody at work for something they did in their private time? So can your boss punish you for something you tweet privately if it's not about work, right? Now, it may depend if you work for the government. It may depend if you work for city services. What if something like being a teacher, like we said, you work with children? What if being a lawyer? I mean, it's an interesting, Poppy says teachers have a morals clause. Okay. Although you could argue whether this is a morals issue. Morals clauses are often, sexual things or crimes or whatever, right? But my point is, you've got an interesting question, first of all, which is, and actually, by the way, I'm talking should, not can. My suspicion is they can. Thank you, Chazak. Depending on the contract you've got with the company, they may be able to fire you for, this is America. Other than firing you for a civil rights category, Black, gay, Latino, race, gender, national origin, right, religion, other than a civil rights category, they can fire you for anything. You could still try to sue. But my question isn't legally. My question is sort of morally or ethically. What do we feel about people getting fired for things they do in their private time? But it gets interesting because I've seen cases where people have had some job and privately, I say privately, thank you, Addie, for the gift. Thank you, Bowie, as well, for the tiny. Oh, it's a tiny, hot dog. Hot dog, thank you. Privately, but publicly, right? So they're doing it on their Twitter feed, their personal Twitter feed, but it's public. They write things that are racist. Can your boss come after you for that? Now, can you? I think they can. Should they? I mean, I remember, who was I talking to? Actually, I know what this was. I've seen guys over the years. Thank you, Bowie. I don't think I've seen that corgi before. I don't remember the corgi. Thank you for that's very cool. For example, there's some guys working in the media. One guy in particular I can think of, and he loves to have his Instagram account is all topless, sometimes maybe underwear, this kind of stuff. He's not naked, but it's because it's Instagram. But it's all suggestive, shirtless, muscles, beach, etc. I find it a little salacious. It's very hot, but I find it a little salacious. If I were hiring him, it would bother me. Now, I would have to talk to a lawyer to find out, is that okay? But it bothers me. There's something a little too salacious. He's got an Instagram account selling his body. I find that weird. Should I, right? But this is part of that discussion. Should that matter, right? He does it in his private time. It's not illegal. It's not immoral, arguably. I find it a little bit immoral, to be honest. There's something about that's a little too salacious for me. But this is where I mean, like when we're talking about firing teachers and stuff, it's a little, you get a little bit of a question of where is the line between things you do in your private life that shouldn't matter in your job? That's the first thing. Then you get a question on teachers, for example. Are teachers a special category because they deal with children? I'd go one step further. What did she say? Because we have seen with this story, for example, a Washington Post writer, opinion writer, got fired this week for retweeting Charlie Kirk's own quote. She took a quote from Charlie Kirk and tweeted it, and they fired her. Is that really fireable offense, right? Now you get, for example, let me put it this way. I think for a teacher, it's complicated. And we're going to talk high school. Let's say it's high school. For a teacher, it's complicated because this still is a political issue. The shooting is political, but all the brouhaha around the shooting is political. Trump's making it political. It's political on all sides, right? You're dealing with kids. You want to be very careful how you deal with political issues with kids, I would say. I have my views on Charlie Kirk and his past statements on lots of issues. If I were teaching a class of high school kids, I would still be very careful how I framed my discussion of Charlie Kirk's positions, right? I don't know. I'm not sure how I would do it. Because it's very complicated. I don't agree. Somebody said, you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it. That's not true. Donald Trump, I'm not giving a eulogy for Donald Trump in 50 years. That's not happening. I'll have lots to say about Donald Trump when it comes to eulogies, and it's not going to be nice. Religious right leaders that have passed away, I've made very clear my feelings on them because they deserve to be excoriated for their positions and the people they've hurt. So I don't agree with that. It's nice to say the golden rule, but I think there are some people who deserve to be called out. But the problem is, especially here, you're dealing with high school kids probably. I think it's somebody's been shot and killed. You're dealing with high school kids. Do you really get into the discussion on whether he was a good person or not with high school kids? I feel like that's a pretty heavy discussion to be having with kids, right? Now, in a college class, you could, even in a college class, I'd be more worried about the politics. In a college class, I'd be more worried about, the conservative kids going crazy, right? Because for example, with college kids, you could have a discussion about, and actually this is probably the most famous free speech case in America. I'd say, at least for my generation, I don't know if it's the most famous free speech case now, but one of the most famous free speech cases in American history goes back to 1979 or so, Chicago suburbs, where I'm from. And we had Nazis, right? The evil people from World War II Germany. We have a neo party of them in America, of course. And again, they're allowed to exist. Now, the government keeps an eye on them, but they're allowed to exist. You're allowed to be an NZ in America as long as you don't preach violence, et cetera, right? But they exist. Well, the NZs decided they were going to march and, show their pride in being horrible human beings. And they decided to march in a city called Skokie. Skokie is a suburb of Chicago. At the time, it could have been the most Jewish place in America, potentially. Certainly in the Chicago area, it was the most Jewish suburb ever. Famous case, the ACLU did defend them. I remember as a kid finding out about it. I remember my mom telling me about it. And my mom, I think at the time, because at the time I was probably 16, and I remember my mom telling me about it. And my takeaway was, they're NZs. We're trying not to use the bad word, but you know what I mean. The Germans, World War II people, they're neo-NZs. But just because they're horrible human beings and horrible people and hateful doesn't mean they don't have a right to speak. And that is an important lesson. Now, some people on the left disagree with that. There was a big controversy back in 2009, 2017, 2018. When was it? When the white supremacists marched in Charlottesville, the ones that Trump said good people on both sides, and they marched in Charlottesville, and one of them took a car and drove into liberal protesters and killed a woman, and they were trying to get a permit to march, and the ACLU defended them. ACLU is our big civil liberties organization. The ACLU defended them, and the left wing went crazy. The left wing went nuts on the ACLU and said, "Do not defend these people. Do not defend these people," they said. And very. And the ACLU caved. The ACLU changed its policies, and I will say this: some young activists who don't understand the Constitution or the Bill of Rights or why we have certain freedoms in America convinced the ACLU to back off. Yeah. One moment. All right. That's okay. Well, we just reported you too. Sorry, we've got more trolls being dicks. Yeah, ignore that. Guys, do not even respond to the troll. Already gone. Misha, you neither. Nobody respond to the troll. I'm just going to, sorry, we have a troll over on YouTube. Sort of the first rule of trolls, they want you to respond. When you respond, they love it, and it gives them an incentive to come back and do more. Definitely let a moderator know when there's a troll, but never respond ever, because you're literally going to give them an incentive to create a new account and come back. So just so you know. Anyway, somebody's being a dick, but don't feed the trolls. Exactly. And it's hard though, because it's hard not to feed the trolls because you get kind of pissed off. So Skokie. So the NZs marched in Skokie. And the lesson as a child, as a teenager, that I learned from that, and it was, thank you guys, yeah, I reported them too. The lesson I learned from that was that even the most despicable people in America, the NZs, have the freedom of speech and the right to freedom of speech. And it used to be a very sacrosanct position. As I said, people on the left went crazy in Charlottesville because white supremacists were being defended by the ACLU, and they got the ACLU to change its position, which is crazy because that was literally, I'm sorry, it was young people taking over an organization and pressuring it, and with zero experience in politics, zero experience in the law, and basically being extremists, sadly. And they got the ACLU to change its position, which is very sad. They absolutely should have defended it because this is America. That's the entire point. In America, and I've said this about the Charlie Kirk shooting as well, one big reason that it's bad is because of the golden rule. Do unto others as you wish others to do unto you. We do not want a climate and a culture in America where people think it is okay to shoot people you disagree with, because first it's Charlie Kirk, and then it's somebody on the left, and then it's somebody on the right, and then it's somebody on the left. And it keeps going and going and going, and it puts everyone in danger. There's lots of reasons the shooting was bad. One of them is because it creates a culture of violence back and forth and back and forth. You don't want that. This is the same thing with the NZs marching in Skokie or the white supremacists marching in Charlottesville. If the federal government is allowed to ban you from marching because they think your message is hateful, who do you think is coming after you next if the court defends that? Right? If a federal court were to say, yes, the president can ban you from marching if he thinks your message is hateful, which president do you think is going to ban people, and who's he going to ban? It's not just going to be Barack Obama banning white supremacists. It's going to be, you know exactly who, and he's going to be banning me and you. That is why when you look at civil rights and civil liberties, but also things like violence, You have to think of the larger picture of what will this do to society overall? What will happen to me? If I say this is okay because it's my enemy who this is happening to, does this mean next time they can do it to me? Right? I mean, there's a very selfish reason why you don't want bad things happening in society, but also why you don't want the government. By the way, this also applies to conservatives right now, right? If Pam Bondi is able to imprison liberals for hate speech, why can't Gavin Newsom, when he's president, do the same thing in response, right? If Donald Trump, and he says he wants to, is able to label liberals as terrorists and liberal organizations as terrorist organizations simply because he doesn't like their message, what is stopping the next Democratic president from doing that to the National Rifle Association or the Heritage Foundation, the Republican think tank, or anything, Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk's group, pick anything, right? If you establish a precedent, a legal precedent, that a president can go after his political enemies, then the president of the other party can also go after his political enemies, and you don't want that. Anyway, I'm beating a dead horse here. I don't want to keep hitting the same point again, but it's very important to think of the repercussions of, even though it feels good going after the other guy today, does that mean you're setting a precedent where when the other guy's in charge, he can come after you? Actually, this is a very common theme in life. This is also the theme about be careful how you are to people on your way up, because you're going to see them on the way down. But there's a lot of similar themes like this, anyway. Oh, I think WC may be worried about WC. He seems like the right one. Well, our Misha set up the two-factor and everything else. So hopefully it's him. Exactly. So it should be him. Actually, that's true. We probably should have set up like a buzzword, a keyword for you, Misha, or something. Like a key thing so we always know it's our Misha. Anyway, there's a lot of other news here. I'm just trying to think what else here. The Federal Reserve will skip. Trump carried out a third attack on a boat leaving Venezuela. Wandering Chill. Oh, thank you. Wandering Chill had a very generous super chat question or comment. Extremism versus extremism equals extremism. Thank you for trying to get this message across. Thank you, Wandering. Yeah, it is, and I think part of the reason, well, first of all, this is the way I think about politics too. I think about it very selfishly, right? But I think also that that's a message that I hope would resonate with people, right? That they would, oh, that's right, there is Luigi News. Thank you, I forgot about that. That the message would resonate with people no matter how partisan you are. You also are selfish and you worry about, that's right, the squirrel. That is right about the squirrel. You're right. No, squirrel, because we talked about squirrel. Or was it, maybe it was crow. Was it crow? I'm forgetting which one it was now. But that people, no matter what your point of view is, people are very selfish and should think selfishly about, if you do this to other people, they will then start doing it to you. Trees are walking. Is that, are these the Ents waking up? Simon Z. Anyway, Zelensky, this was weird. So Zelensky is pushing Trump to Macbeth. I was thinking the Ents from Tolkien, the trees are walking. I'm totally thinking of Tolkien. That's very funny, Macbeth. Zelensky is putting pressure on Trump to take a clear position on Russia and ratchet up sanctions. Reuters says the Trump administration is preparing its first U.S. weapons aid packages based on the new what was this? The new mechanism developed by the U.S. and allies to supply Ukraine with weapons from U.S. stocks using funds from NATO countries. And some 74% of Ukrainians would accept a peace deal freezing hostilities along the current front lines and backed by Western security guarantees. You know what? I'm gonna skip. There's only a couple little itty bitty stories. I'm gonna skip those. Only because it's 7 o'clock already. Let's sit and chat a minute about all of this stuff. Yeah. So there was Luigi news today. I almost forgot about it. It may not matter in a way, but the judge threw out the terrorism charges against Luigi Mangione, right? The guy that allegedly shot and killed the healthcare executive and the health insurance executive. And the judge threw out the murder charges, saying that the state did not prove its case. What is interesting about, there we go, a little more color. What's interesting about that is, not murder, I'm sorry, terrorism, not murder, terrorism charges. The state threw out the terrorism charges. We've talked about this. It's not clear. I'm very 50-50 on whether what Luigi did was terrorism. This is not a defense of Luigi. I think what he did was murder. But was it terrorism? Terrorism is not, I'm a lawyer again, Georgetown. Terrorism is not, oh, I was terrified. Terrorism has sort of specific definitions in the law. And it's things such as you committed violence in order to influence politicians, for example, right? You committed violence in order to terrorize the nation at large or a specific class of Americans. For example, burning down a black church because, oh, you're Gulk too, Jennifer? That's funny, gender. Or you burned down a black church because you wanted to scare black people nationwide, right? That's considered terrorism. Murder is not always terrorism. And in this case, with Luigi, it's a little 50-50 because he wrote his little manifesto about the health insurance industry. Okay, that's interesting. But I think he would have had to write a note that said he was committing the crime in order to send a message to every health insurance exec that you're next if you don't X, Y, and Z. If you don't lower prices, if you don't, right? Now you've got terrorism. That is specific. That would be specifically committing a violent crime in order to politically coerce people to do something, right? But he didn't quite do that. He complained about healthcare executives. Let me put it this way. What if, hypothetical, what if Luigi, his mother had been denied a claim and he was so upset he went to the insurance company and committed violence? Would that be terrorism? I don't think so. People would want to call it that. That would be murder and it would be vengeance, so to speak. But it would be akin to these people who go to work when they get fired and they go back to the work and commit violence. That's wrong. It's not necessarily. It sounds like terrorism because a lot of people. No, mass shooters are not necessarily terrorism. They can be, but they're often not. They could be the person's crazy. They could be, like Beach Lady said, crimes of passion. Right? You got fired, and you got pissed off and decided I'm going back to hurt people. That's not terrorism. Terrorism is I'm being careful kind of what I say because I don't want to get into trouble with TikTok here, but terrorism is killing people with a specific goal of scaring a group of people nationwide, blacks, Jews, Muslims, whoever. It could be Republicans too. If you were to harm a Republican and you wrote a message that said, I want every Republican to be afraid, then it's terrorism, I would argue, because you literally did it because you wanted to send a message, not just a message, you wanted to impact everyone nationwide. That's different. In this case, he said that guy, even this one, I don't think it's the Charlie Kirk one. It may not be terrorism. I don't think it's terrorism. It's murder, clearly. I don't think it's terrorism, though, unless he wrote a note that said he was trying to scare Republicans across the country, right? Well, that's what I mean. It depends on his motive. Ward said depends on motives, exactly. It's not a hate crime. It's not a hate crime because politics is not a protected category in hate crimes. Hate crime categories are race, religion, national origin, sexual orientation. There's 6 categories. I'm forgetting them now. Race, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, disability, gender. Thank you. I forgot gender. Yep. Thank you, Al-Hassan. You've got to be one of those 6 categories for it to be a civil rights violation and a hate crime or a hate crime. Politics is not. But again, politics isn't because I think politicians on both sides, I think Republicans especially, got worried if you're going to start saying someone's political views, someone's crime should be more if they did it for politics, are you going to come after Republicans and say, you're going to have to Republicans with that, But exactly. Anyway. Frank says the crime was committed to terrorize people. No, it wasn't, though. Whose crime? But it wasn't. I don't know. It depends. First, it depends who. If it's Luigi, but like I said, Luigi, I think is 50-50, right? It depends. If he was trying to send a message to the healthcare industry across the board, that gets interesting, terrorism-wise. If it's I hate healthcare people, they're all pigs, he says, and he's going after them, then it's vengeance, it's passion. It's crazy, but whatever word you want to use. Well, yeah, but you can still target one. Joshua says, or not Joshua, sorry, Toothless says he targeted one person, but you can target one person and have it be terrorism. You can target one person because you want to send a message to every African American, and so that none of them feel safe. That if that's your goal, that's probably terrorism. Doesn't have to be multiple people. I don't think so. We'd have to look at the law, but I don't think it has to be multiple people. I don't think so. Terrorism charge was dropped against Luigi today. Correct. Anyway, so yes, but there's still other state charges against Luigi for 15 years in prison if he's guilty, and there's still federal charges that I think include the death penalty. I think so, or at least life imprisonment. So he's not getting off anytime soon. Well, Raul, the problem is you got to define. Raul said, hot take, designating groups as domestic terrorists are good if they commit terrorist acts. But as we said, the definition of a terrorist act is honestly not always clear. That's the problem. It's as we just said, defining a terrorist act is a little, I told you guys this before. I don't know if it's still the case. Years ago, not that many, maybe 10 years ago, I went and I Googled the definition of terrorism on various U.S. government websites, FBI, Department of Justice, CIA, and the definition was different on every website. It was real. Actually, I'm going to see if I can pull this up. I'm going to see if it's still this way now. It blew my mind. Hang on a second. I don't think I'm going to say terrorism definition. Let's see. I'm trying CIA here. Okay. Oh, this is good. Actually, I think I may find this. Hang on. Ooh. I'm already finding a number of federal websites. This is good. This is very good. All right, let me see here. Hopefully I get some definitions here. 1977, that doesn't help. That's too old. Terrorism, international terrorism, domestic terrorism. So this is FBI's website. Domestic terrorism, violent criminal acts committed by individuals and or groups to further ideological goals stemming from domestic influences such as those of a political, religious, social, racial, or environmental nature. What? What? Violent criminal acts committed by individuals or groups to further ideological goals. I don't even know what that means. Okay, that's a weird quote. That was FBI. State Department. Terrorism, according to the State Department. Premeditated, politically motivated violence perpetrated against non-combatant targets by subnational groups or clandestine agents. Okay, totally different. Immigration and customs enforcement. Let's see if they have a definition. Terrorism involves violence or the threat of violence against people or property to further a particular ideology. So that's a little more like the other one. Terrorism can be domestic, meaning social or political objectives influence the attacks in the terrorist's home country. Social or political objectives. That seems a little too general for me. I don't know. That seems a little general, right? I mean, maybe, but I don't know. I think that's almost too, they're trying to say if it's political at all, it's terrorism. I don't know about that. I'd have to think of examples, but I don't know. 257 definitions worldwide. Well, as I said, the U.S. government had multiple definitions. USC 233, I think, is the one that State Department was relying on, I think, Tom. Yeah. But there, I would say that definition about ideological is not specific enough. That's way too broad. You can't simply say somebody committed an act because they were motivated by politics. I mean, okay, you don't like a politician and you go up and punch him in the face. Is that terrorism? I don't think so. I mean, right? But maybe it's because I was just going to say, Ward is saying axiomatically, yeah, and I was saying the same thing. But possibly legally, maybe it is. Legally, maybe. But it doesn't feel like terrorism to me. It's certainly assault, but assault can be terrorism too, right? I don't know. It's anyway, very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, very interesting. You know. So anyway. Oh, it's 7:15. All right, we'll go another. Sasha wants water too. We're almost done here. We're at our quitting time, so we can. I hear you, dog. Let me give the dog a little bit of water, and then we'll say goodbye. All right, a little bit of water here. Little bit of water. All right. There you go. Okay. There, a little bit. There you go. Anyway. Oh boy. Oh boy. Yeah, anxiety is bad everywhere. Game Legend says, are we close to World War III because of Russia and Article 4? No. First of all, because Trump doesn't care. So Trump is not going to ratchet up tensions. Trump has been excusing the Russians. The Russians had a drone invasion of Poland, really. 19 Russian drones invaded Poland the other week. And Trump kind of blew it off. The Poles were very upset. Trump blew it off. Europe was not happy. It certainly looks like Putin was basically testing NATO and testing Trump in particular to see what he would do. Trump blew it off and made excuses for Putin and defended Putin. On its face, you're not going to war with Putin if you're sucking up to him. I mean, that's right. So that's not happening. Article 4 is simply a NATO country. I got to look up the exact definition. Article 4 is something like our security is being. Somebody pull up Article 4 of the NATO Charter? It's Article 5 is the mutual self-defense. Article 4 is less. Let me see. But it basically means we need to get together and talk because somebody impinged on my sovereignty, basically. Hold on. Give me the details of Article 4 of the NATO Charter. Yes, it's consultation, but why? That's my question. The parties will consult together whenever, in the opinion in any of them, the territorial integrity, political independence, or security of any of the parties is threatened. Okay, difference with Article 5. Article 5, hold on. Give me the language now for Article 5. Article 5 says the parties agree that an armed attack against one or more of them shall be considered an armed attack against all of them. So it's a little more, so your security is threatened for Article 4. Article 5 is an armed attack. So a little bit different in that case. But in any case, the polls certainly want the Europeans to get together and discuss this. Trump couldn't care less. So there's no threat of World War III because Trump is not going to do it. So I will say this: what the Russians are doing is dangerous. Sending drones into Poland could potentially cause a problem. It's a little dangerous. It could lead to war at some point, but we're not close yet. No. So there you go. Elk, you're funny. You're becoming a Republican, a Western Republican there, Misha. He's making elk, or you're an Alaskan maybe even. Anyway, he's making elk sandwiches. Too funny. All right, guys. I'm going to sign off. Thank you for joining us. 719. Shoot some of them down. Get all of them. And now it looks like maybe some of the missiles they used to try to shoot them down might have even hit one of the Polish homes that was damaged. So it's not easy. Oh, thank you, Cheryl. Address. Thank you for that, Cheryl. That was nice. And as a last-minute gift, too. That was sweet of you. Thank you. All right, guys. Yep. Do follow me on TikTok. I always forget to ask you guys that. Someday I'll remember. But I'll be back tomorrow, 6 o'clock Eastern. And we will, you're very open-minded about food, at least. And guys, thank you for joining. Discord, have a good evening. We'll start with you. All right. By Doug and Jeffrey. All right. Where is this? Guys. And TikTok, you are next.